Welcome to First Fridays with the FBI. I am your host, Monica Tucker, a concerned civilian citizen who speaks with the FBI on the first Friday of each month to address situational awareness topics and concerns. Our hope is to bridge the gap of disconnect between our citizens, like myself, and law enforcement personnel, like the El Paso field office of the FBI. Today's guests, Supervisory Special Agent Aida Reyes and Special Agent Marta Terrazas. Our topic for this month is crimes against children.
Welcome, Aida and Martha from the
Thank
El
you.
Paso field office of the FBI. Thank you guys for coming on and joining us today for a very special and important topic regarding our children. Before we get started, can you both introduce yourselves?
Yes, my name is Aida Reyes, and I'm the Supervisory Special Agent for the Violent Crimes Against Children and Human Trafficking Squad.
And hello, I'm Special Agent Marta Terrazas, and right now I am the recruiter for the FBI field office in El Paso, Texas. But I also have a little bit of experience. I worked crimes against children, child exploitation for about 10 years with the Bureau.
Okay, well, welcome and thank you guys for taking time out of your busy days to share with our community about this very important topic. And as we all know, April is National Child Abuse Awareness Month. It's also Sexual Assault Awareness Month, and it's also Month of the Military Child, which is an important demographic who I believe needs to hear this information also. So it's definitely a fitting month to continue our conversation and awareness about crimes against children. So what is the FBI's role or mission in combating crimes against children? Like, is there a specific task force or specialist designated to handle this type of crime?
There is. Our mission, of course, is most importantly to identify, locate, and recover any victims of child sexual abuse or kidnappings in relation to children, just combat any type of crime that is focused on exploitation of children. Additionally, we also strengthen our relationships with our local, federal, state, and tribal law enforcement partners to make sure that we mitigate this threat in our area of responsibility.
Okay. So when does the FBI become involved as opposed to local law enforcement? Because I think just speaking with a few people, some feel that they should call the police first and some believe that they should call the FBI first. So how is that determined?
Yeah, I can answer that. So that is a very good question. We need to make sure that we are focusing on crimes that have a federal nexus. So the FBI historically is not a first responder. So if there is an urgent matter, if it's a life or death situation, then 911 would be the most appropriate law enforcement agency to contact. Now, the FBI gets involved, like I said, when there's a federal nexus, when there's a special jurisdiction. For example, here in the El Paso area, Fort Bliss is a special jurisdiction, which means that the military police respond, Army CID, or FBI, depending on the situation. The FBI also gets involved if there is a crime that occurs crossing a state line, and that includes with the use of internet. So if there's somebody that is traveling to engage in any type of sexual activity with a minor, then that would be a crime that would constitute a federal nexus.
Okay.
There's also our task forces. A lot of times, other law enforcement agencies, whether it's other federal, state, or local agencies, solicit assistance from the FBI through like our task forces. So that's how sometimes we all become involved.
Okay. Thank you for sharing that. So what is your priority here on the border, like in the El Paso area, concerning these crimes? And which types of crimes against children are more prevalent here? If that's even, I guess the question, which ones are more prevalent? Because they're all, important, but are there certain crimes that are more prevalent here?
Well, in the FBI, I mean, just like any organization, I'm sure, we have to triage. So whatever is the most urgent, like for example, a kidnapping of a child, that would be, of course, a priority and something that we would have to move much quicker than, let's say, for example, a teenager distributing nude photos, for example, that are already out and they were self-producing those photos. So we do have those prioritizations. Child abductions would be our priority. Production cases where a child has been used to produce child pornography, that would also be a priority. Online networks, sexual exploitation of minors online would also be a priority. And then distribution and possession of items that are already child pornography that is already out there would also, in that order, would be a priority. We also investigate international parental kidnappings. And those, of course, there's several requirements that have to be met in order for us to take on those type of cases.
Okay. Well, here, I guess in El Paso, and I guess anywhere, but of course, I'm really wanting to understand more about what's happening here in El Paso. So since the pandemic, has there been an increase in the reporting of crimes against children?
There has been an increase, and that primarily has been due to the increased use of computers online. With the COVID pandemic, we saw schooling online, everything is done online. We didn't have really a lot of contact in person. So we did see a 35% increase in reports of suspected child sexual abuse in 2021. And particularly a little bit over 16% was stemming from online enticement type of situation, type of crimes. We also saw an increase in the number of videos versus still images of involving child pornography. So those were some of the statistical items that we've been seeing over the past year.
Wow.
With the increased time of kids being online, or even where they're on games, or they're anywhere that has capabilities to connect to the internet, the more time they spend online, the greater risk that they're gonna, be susceptible to online predators.
Okay, so limiting that time, even though we're still in a pandemic, but things are lightening up a little bit, parents still need to, I guess, be cautious about what their kids are doing online.
And you know what,
Right.
Monica, I think you hit the nail on the head. Having even more vigilance, being even more vigilant with your kids, and making sure you know who they're contacting, who are they communicating with, what are they sharing, just having those talks, and just educating yourself as a parent, and then educating your kids as responsible, when they're online, and seeing some of the red flags. If it's somebody they don't know, they shouldn't, they really shouldn't have, or open the door to communication with, with individuals that they don't know.
Right. So when you are involved in investigating these crimes, how long does it usually take to make an arrest?
Well, that varies, of course, on the magnitude of the investigation, how the scope of the investigation. If it's a simple matter, for the most part, it's been anywhere from 3 to 6 months.
Wow, that has to be hard. I know. I think when it comes to law enforcement, I don't think we realize what law enforcement, especially like with the FBI, goes through investigating cases, and you can't really get in there and arrest people without the proper evidence. So I know that has to be difficult. Definitely.
Right. Yep.
So locally, how many people have been arrested within the last year? And especially in 2022, I know we've seen some cases where there were some arrests, but concerning our area, how are those numbers?
So Monica, in the FBI, we normally go by fiscal years. And in fiscal year 22, which begins October 1st of 2021 through the end of September of 2022, it's not over yet. We're at about mid-year right now, and we already have 10 arrests. And of course, that clearly it's going to be it's going to be more than that. The year's not over yet.
One is too many. And just to think that it's here, it's scary. Oh, wow. So what percentage of the cases usually involve a family member or persons known to the victim?
In most cases, it is going to be either a family member or somebody that the family or child knows and trusts. 90% of those children are ages 8 to 16. So some of them are very young. But anyway, we still we target, of course, those that are under 18.
Right. So can you tell us, for those who, are watching and they want to know, how can crimes against children be prevented?
Well, like we mentioned before, the internet is, for all its benefits, it has a lot of really great things, and it's useful, and it's allowed us to communicate and connect to people all over the world, really. But it also comes with risks. Right. And I think it is important to educate our children when we provide them with a cell phone. We're giving them access to communicate to people that they don't know. If they have the ability to download an app where they can direct message anyone, Snapchat, any of those other social media, Instagram, any of those groups, it can be anyone. And certainly we see a lot of individuals posting as, personally, I've seen an increase in teenagers or parents filing a report saying, hey, my teenager sent a photo. They thought they were talking to this cute girl, and they ended up sending nude photos of themselves. And it turns out that it wasn't, of course, a girl. It was somebody else across the world, and now they're being extorted. So if they don't pay them X amount of money, then they'll threaten to post their photos online. So I think it's important to educate anyone that has a cell phone on the dangers of posting anything online, and just measuring the dangers of believing that they're actually communicating with whoever they think they're communicating, and being a little bit more cautious when they're using their phones.
Also, we all know our kids, right? We're parents. We know our kids. We know their behavior. We know all of that. So when they're withdrawing from friends, or they're engaging in unusual activities, there are changes in behavior, like if they become a little bit more aggressive or angry or hostile or hyperactive, or changes in their school performance. That's huge too. Depression, anxiety, unusual fears, sudden lack of confidence, an apparent lack of supervision, frequent absences from school, reluctance to leave school activities, like if they don't want to go home, attempts at running away, rebellious or defiant behavior, self-harm, or attempts at suicide. All of those things, I know a lot of times we might think, oh, well, they're teenagers, oh, they're acting, but one or two or more of those behaviors really are red flags. And maybe it's time to sit down and have that conversation. What is going on? As a parent, keep those lines of communication open with your kids, and be vigilant, and be aware of these signs.
So when it comes to agents who do this job, especially for children, how is that handled? Like, I'm pretty sure not all agents can be assigned to something like this. How is that determined?
So not every agent works, crimes against children or child exploitation. It takes, it takes a lot of it is very emotionally draining, and the things you see, it's not an easy violation to work. It is the most worthwhile violation to work, of course, in my opinion. But it is tough. There's images that you'll never unsee. There is interviews that you'll never be able to forget. There's incidents that happen that that will affect you and can affect you, both emotionally, physically. And so you do go through training, but also the Bureau provides a program that protects and assists special agents with their well-being. Every year, you do a battery of tests, and you need to prove that you're okay to still work this, that you're not affected. Of course, you're going to be affected to some level, but not affected to where you can't, do your job anymore. So the Bureau does do a great job, of checking in on that.
That's good to know. So agents do get mental health care. Yes,
we do.
That's good. So now what about the children? Because I know it can be difficult interviewing children. And I think you mentioned before on how not to force children into talking about it. So when it comes to interviewing the children, how does that work?
So when we have an outcry or when something is reported to law enforcement that a child has been a victim of either sexual abuse or physical abuse, we're asking them to tell us something that is very difficult for them, maybe makes them feel ashamed, embarrassed, guilty. And a lot of times they feel that it's their fault or that they did something wrong to cause what happened to them. So what we do is we do have an environment that is more of a soft approach. We bring them in. Law enforcement will arrange all of that. We will go ahead and coordinate with a child and adolescent forensic interviewer. These are individuals that are specifically trained to interview children and teenagers, adolescents, anywhere from little bitty kiddos, toddlers, all the way to 17. And these, what we call CAFIs, short for child adolescent forensic interviewers, they are trained in specific techniques to elicit truthful information from these children. And we use an approach, they know how to ask questions that is going to be easier for the victim to tell their story. So it is very important that children are not forced or pushed into something that they're not ready to talk about. A CAFI is what we use even as investigators, because they're the ones that are trained to interview children.
Thank you for that. Again, just from talking to people in the community, I've talked to younger people, older people, and sometimes I don't believe that a lot of people think that it happens here in El Paso, especially extortion. So can you, just mention that once again so that they know that extortion and people wanting money for to release those pictures, or that actually happens?
Oh yes, it is. It is very real. We get a lot of those. I see a lot of those type of complaints that come across my desk. That or mom or dad is filing a report for their minor son, and girls too. I think it's about equivalent as far as gender. Who is being sextorted is the term that we use. So they'll threaten them with, hey, if I don't get more photos, I'm going to post your video. So it's like ongoing, getting more and more photos or videos of an individual. And yes, it does happen here in the El Paso area.
And you know what, I can probably give you an example. I won't go into details, but it was downtime. It was around spring break, and there was a young man, and he was, trolling through social media, and he met a really good looking young girl. And they were just communicating, right? Just on a platform. I can't remember which particular platform. But then she says, "Hey, send me a sexy picture." And so the young man does. He was only I think 13 or 14. And he sends that picture to him. And they keep communicating. He's like, "You send me one of yours." And so, this happened. And then she said, "Well, let me send it to you, but add me as a friend." And so, yes. And so he did this. And so the next thing you know, this young lady, which ended up not being a young lady, was extorting him and said, "If you don't send me more pictures of you, and if you don't take your parents' credit card and enter it into this," she gave him explicit instructions on what to do. He said, "I am going to send this to all of your contacts. I'm going to send the pictures you sent me to all of your contacts." And so the young man panicked, and he snuck into his parents' room and got a credit card. The good thing about that is that it wasn't working. He couldn't enter it. He started getting nervous. He finally, woke up his parents and said, "Hey, this is happening. This is what I did. What do I do?" And so they called, they made a police report right away, and they were able to stop that. But that is how easy it happens. And that happened here in El Paso. So that's how quick, and that's how important it is, to begin with, not take any images like that, but also, if you see yourself in a situation like that, is reach out to somebody, reach out to your parents. It's better that they know, at the onset of what's happening, than when it's too late and you feel like you don't have an escape. So, that's just one example, but Monica, it happens a lot. It really does. And it does happen here in El Paso. So that's why we need to educate ourselves. We need to educate our kids, and we need to just keep reminding them, about the dangers that are out there, and the predators that are just, waiting for you to be vulnerable.
So you guys heard it from the El Paso field office of the FBI that it does happen here in El Paso with our young people. So I guess that goes into my next question about what can the community do to identify when and if a child is being abused or trafficked or someone is threatening them. By community, I mean, family members, neighbors, teachers, other students. What can we do to try to identify that?
I think, as Martha just alluded to, just looking for those signs, those red flags. If you had a kid that was super involved with sports and extracurricular activities, and suddenly they're withdrawn, you see a drastic change, being secretive. Those are things that may be a red flag for somebody to sit down and look into what exactly is going on with that.
Yeah.
With that
And a lot of times we hesitate. Well, his mom should do it, or well, it's okay. Tell anybody. If you have a friend and you feel that, that this is happening to them, or you see signs, just tell somebody, report it. If you're a parent and you think it's another child's behavior that's changing, don't hesitate. It's better to be safe, that to end up having a child be a victim. To parents, know what your kids are doing online, frequent checks. A lot of parents are like, well, I have to respect their privacy. Well, yes, and I understand that, but to a certain extent, especially if they're young and they're underage, know what your kids are doing online. Often apps and games that seem innocent have chat features that can be misused by adults looking to make contact with children. Know who your kids are with and where they're hanging out. There are obvious situations like being on the street late at night. Adults can target kids in public places, like the mall, parks, concerts. I'm not saying don't allow it, just always be vigilant. And Always communicate with your kids. Teach your children skills for resiliency. Help your child build self-esteem at any age. Maintain open communication with your child. That's huge. So that if something does happen, they feel comfortable coming up to you and telling you, Mom, Dad, this happened, or, how do I handle this? Or does this look weird? Or, anything like that. Those lines of communication are important. Be someone that the teens in your life can speak with.
Okay. And I know I did ask about, how can we, identify when a child may be a victim? What about those who are committing the crimes? Like, are there certain attributes or certain things that the community can look out for when it comes to, because that could be a tricky, situation, because you may call the police on someone who's actually innocent, but they may, look like they're doing something they shouldn't be doing.
There really is no like one profile for a pedophile. There really isn't. They act like this and they drive a white van with no, windows, or they, nothing for those people who do have vans with no windows. Okay. I'm just saying you're typical. There is no anywhere we can fit them. It is all walks of life, all male, female, there is just not one type. That is why it's so important to be aware, to be vigilant. And there is the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, NCMEC, has a site. It's amazing. If parents are not sure or how to approach it, or where to get information, or how to get help, it's missingkids.org. That's the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. There's a lot of information on there, on that site, also on how to handle certain situations. So that's helpful too, because I wish we could tell you there is one specific trait or one specific thing to look for. There isn't, Monica. That's what makes it so, so dangerous.
Right. I can imagine. So, well, what else can we do to assist with your efforts in catching criminals and protecting victims?
I think, like we've been talking about, just making sure that we are communicating with our children, making sure that we have a good line of communication, know who they're hanging out with. If we see any suspicious activities, such as leaving at odd hours of the night, or not knowing where they are, or a drastic change in personality, just looking out for those things, and making sure that your kids are protective, and just making sure that when you hand over a cell phone, it comes with a lot of responsibility. Do the education portion on that, because that it can have really drastic consequences. So once a video or photo is out on the internet, it's out there, and you can't erase it, or it's not going to go away. So that can be really, it can have awful consequences for anybody that is for anybody for that matter, especially a child that is still trying to figure things out, is vulnerable, trying to find out who they are. It can be a tough situation. So just the education portion is important.
Okay.
And even if you just share, think before you hit send, just about a message, about an image, about any of that. If you just take a few seconds to think before you hit that send button, that is amazing what that will do. In young kids also, if you see all of a sudden they have large amounts of money, or you see signs of physical abuse or injuries, or withdrawal or anything like that, there is signs. And if you're just vigilant and you look out, for stuff like that, you will be able to recognize, when there is something changing within your child or going on. So just that, educate yourself, educate your children, and keep those lines of communication open.
Okay.
And if you see something, just ask or report it or call it to their attention or have that conversation. Communication is huge.
Okay. And I know some people listening will say all of this is repetitive, but when it involves kids, we're going to be coming back to talk about it again, because I think the more people hear it, the more people will take it seriously about what we should do, in the community. So how can people get in touch with you, or, how can they report information if that does become the case?
Yes, absolutely. So if it, like I said earlier, if it's an emergency situation, of course, 911 would be your first stop. If it's something that has occurred, or that the child has what we call outcry, and told the parent or an adult that, hey, something happened to me, then we call the phone number here, or you can also, if you wanted to be confidential, you can also file a report online. It's tips.fbi.gov.
Okay. Well, I really appreciate you all coming on today. And again, like I said, I know you'll be back, because anything that involves the kids, especially the kids, well, any crime, but definitely the kids, we want to make sure that we keep that information flowing in the community so that people know that it's okay to report. So we appreciate you for coming on today. Thank you.
Thank you, Monica.